Om Sadguru Paramatmane Namo Namaha. I request all the delegates and scholars to assemble in the hall as we are going to start the third plenary session. That is the second day's proceeding of this Asia Philosophy Conference 2018. Please, whosoever is there in outside or in the Bhojanalay, please do complete quickly and do come. Thank you. Honorable Chair, Shri Swami Shri Hari Prasad Ji of Vishnu Mohan Foundation, Chennai, and co-chair Professor Jata Shankar, well-known scholar, Member Secretary of ICPR, New Delhi, and the speakers are Professor Jio Leong Lee, he is from Sun Moon University, South Korea. Second speaker will be Dr. Thich Tham Duc, Vice Rector and General Secretary, Vietnam Buddhist Research Institute, Ho Chi Minh City. And the third speaker is Dr. Shailesh Mehta, HSRC, Surat. So I request all honorable scholars to have your seat on the dais. Thank you. So as I said, our honorable chair is Shri Swami Shri Hari Prasad Ji of Vishnu Mohan Foundation, Chennai. Namaskaromi Bhagwan. Bhavatam upasthitya vayam sarve upakritaha. आदरणीयाः कनुदादा महाभागात्र संप्राप्ताः तेभ्याम् आदरेषु वयं सविनयं प्रणमामः. आदरणीयाः कनुदादा has arrived. Then co-chair Shri Professor Jata Shankar. He is a replacing member secretary of ICPR. जटा शब्द से अभी मुझे योगेश शुक्ल जी कह रहे थे कि जो शिव तांडव स्तोत्र है आप इसका एक श्लोक सुनाएं, तो जटा से ही शुरू होता है. जटा कटा हसम भ्रम भ्रमण निलिंप निर्जरी विलोल वीचि वल्लरी विराजमान मूर्धनि धगत 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 ज्वल ललाट पट्ट पावके किशोर चंद्रशेखरे रति प्रतिक्षणम मम. प्रोफेसर जटा शंकर, सर, वी आर obliged. Thank you very much by your presence. And then our honorable speakers, first of all, Professor Jio Leong Lee. He is from Sun Moon University, South Korea. Sir, please, sir. Yeah. Only yesterday, Professor Godabarish Mishra ji has said about you, you studied in India with him, and then in South Korea, you have spread out the whole philosophy and this holistic science, etc. Thank you very much, sir. Then Dr. Thich Tham Duc. He is from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam Buddhist Research Institute, General Secretary. When we see or we hear about the Buddhist philosophy or Buddhist way of thinking, immediately we remember Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. That is Atmadipo Bhava. Sarvam Vedic Vangmayam Vartate. Bhavantu. Dr. Suresh Mehta, HRRC, Surat, very well known. Shri Shailesh, Dr. Shailesh Mehta ji. Sorry, sir. Please. Dr. Shailesh Mehta ji. So, I will respect and invite Professor Jio Leong Lee, the first speaker of this session. Please.
Hello, respected Chair Shri Swami Hariprasad, Shri Vishnu Mohan Foundation from Chennai, and Professor Rajneesh Shukla, and respected professors and scholars and friends. The topic of my paper this morning is suffering as a starting point of discovering the world within. The history of spiritual Hinduism is largely the history of man's yearning for fundamental solution to the problem of human suffering. Because I don't have enough time to read my paper, so I have to skip some part of my paper. According to Sankhya, wherever there are gunas, there are pains. Even the so-called pleasures lead us to pain. Man is a combination of soul and the body exists for experience and liberation for Purusha. Broadly speaking, experience here means pain and suffering. The fact that I am alive means that I have a living body, and the body is basically composed of gunas. Therefore, having a body means that my life is suffering. Because my body and the material world on which it is placed are made of gunas, my life is in itself suffering. As long as I have a living body, I cannot avoid suffering, which is the ontological condition of human beings. The desires of a living person to have no suffering is like denying his own fundamental foundations. First, one thing to be pointed out here is that suffering is not the object of removal. Suffering is the object of overcoming. As long as we are alive, pain and suffering are always with our lives. Suffering is an inescapable and integral part of life. Suffering is a part of living until finally reaching moksha. Until reaching this state, suffering is always present on our own life's path. Hindu tradition holds that since we are in human form on earth, we are bound by the laws of our world and will experience pain and suffering. Therefore, what we need to pay attention to in this life is not a painless life, but the process of overcoming pain and suffering. Regardless of whether we reach our destination or not, our effort to overcome suffering has its own significance. As mentioned before, suffering is the object of overcoming in our life. Nevertheless, our final destination is not a life without suffering. The answer may lie elsewhere. In this regard, I would like to share a story of dream I had previously. In my dream, I was traveling in India with my friends and met a wedding procession on the street of a city. I danced with them and went back to my hotel. Then I found out that I had lost my wallet. Of course, I was very distressed. How distressing is it that you lost your wallet when you are traveling in a strange city? To find my lost wallet, I rushed to the street where I was playing with the marriage procession. No matter how hard I looked, my wallet was not visible. Then suddenly, I found my wallet on the street and I checked inside my wallet. Unfortunately, it was already an empty wallet. Someone had taken the cash and credit card that was in it. And what I found was an empty wallet. In my dream, I was very weak. I suddenly realized that I had to report my lost credit card to the company. I hurried to go to the phone shop near the hotel and I started dialing to make a call to report the loss of my credit card. However, in the process of dialing, I repeatedly made a mistake dialing the last number. My mind was so frustrated. Then suddenly I woke from the dream. At the moment of awakening from the dream, my feelings were so refreshed. It seemed as if my mind was as light as if it was flying. In my dream, I had lost my wallet, and to solve the serious problem of finding my wallet was my top priority. However, The problem of losing my wallet in my dream was solved, not because I found my wallet, but because I woke up from my dream. The moment I woke from the dream, neither losing my wallet nor failing to find it was any problem. Even my mistake in dialing that made me so frustrated was not a problem at all. The important thing was to awaken from the dream. But how could I wake from my dream? Thanks to my hard work to find my wallet, I was able to wake up from my dream. To be more precise, what made me awake from the dream was the heaviness in my mind that came as a result of my hard work to find my wallet. Our life of seeking to achieve the ultimate goal of nirvana is no different than trying to find the wallet in the dream. The suffering we experience in our life is the heaviness of our mind that comes from the inability to find the wallet. Just as the distress of our mind in our dream awakens us from the dream, the suffering we experience in our life also frees us from samsara. If there is no suffering in our life, it should be said that we are not likely to escape from samsara. From this perspective, the teaching that life is suffering is rather a message that life is hopeful, because only a disease with pain can be cured. A disease without pain is incurable. Cancer is a typical example of an incurable disease. Suffering is a sign that it can be cured or that it is being cured. The meaning of life as suffering is like this. Having pain in life is a positive sign that the life poisoned by illness can be cured or is currently being cured. Therefore, we must first admit to the fact that life is suffering. We can see what is the next only if we forgive the suffering in our life. The two directions from which the awareness of life is suffering arises. When there is an experiential awareness that life is suffering, our journey to discover the world within begins. If anyone does not realize that life is suffering, it means that he has not yet begun the first step of the inner journey. Of course, it cannot be simply an intellectual understanding that life is suffering. Understanding life on a rational basis is not much help to us on our journey to the inner world. The shift of attention from the outside world to an interest in the inner world occurs with the awareness that life is suffering. And this is possible when we can see the outside world as it is. Only wisdom that is obtained by our own experience allows us to take the first step on our journey to inner world. The awareness that life is suffering comes to us from two opposing directions. One is from the sudden poverty of material and external environment, and the other is from material abundance. Let's first consider the first case. For example, suppose a businessman suddenly goes bankrupt. At this time, there are two kinds of thought that can happen to him. One is, will I commit suicide? And the other, will I go into the mountains and become a monk? Sudden bankruptcy has caused this kind of thinking that had never happened to him previously. In other words, the sudden bankruptcy has given him an awareness that life is suffering, which leads to an opportunity to die or become a monk. This example refers to cases in which the awareness that life is suffering comes from when one is afflicted with external miseries and suffering. Contrary to the above example, material abundance may be the cause of the awareness that life is suffering. In this case, the awareness that life is suffering is expressed in the expression, it is not all of life that I eat well, live well, and die. In view of the denial of present life, this case is not much different from the case mentioned above. The start to the inner world begins with despair of the reality we live in. There is no beginning to the inner world unless there is despair in the reality we live in. Let's take another example. When a person has a good business and that person's environment becomes materially very affluent, there are two possibilities for him. One is hedonism, and the other is an interest in the inner world. Material abundance is extremely dangerous to people. The reason is that it creates the possibility that a person can become a man of spirituality, but it is also may cause a person to become a prodigal human. In this regard, certain bankruptcy is dangerous, but certain material abundance is also dangerous. If the former has the risk of provoking suicide, the latter risks causing a person to fall into a material deprivation. When we say that material abundance is dangerous, it does not mean that it should be avoided because it is dangerous. To be dangerous implies only to be careful. It is no different than giving up all the important things to accomplish in our lives in order to avoid what is dangerous. To be dangerous means that it is very lethal to us, and what is so fatal to us is also very precious to us. It is as if a poison that can cause deadly harm to a person's life can also be a valuable medicine that can save the life of a dying person. Dharmas of Ayurveda are the vital points in the body where the life force energy is concentrated, and therefore these points can be used to cure many diseases and ailments. However, it is said that an advanced Karari master can disable or kill his opponent merely by touching the correct Dharma point. In general, the beginning of Christian faith is often associated with misery or poverty in the external environment. The typical Jesus Christ is a typical example of this. I will skip this part. On the contrary, the prosperity of Indian religious traditions, including Buddhism, was always based on material abundance. This can be easily understood by considering the rising and flourishing of Buddhism in India. Throughout the history of Buddhism, the rise of Buddhism is accompanied by material well-being. The life of Buddha, the Buddha is in stark contrast to the life of Jesus Christ. Unlike Jesus Christ, who had an unfortunate childhood, the Gautama Buddha was born a prince of the Sakyas and experienced the greatest material luxuries that he could enjoy at that time. According to Jataka, even his father prevented Prince Siddhartha from encountering the scenes of sickness, old age, death, and asceticism so that Siddhartha would not know that life is suffering. Despite this kind of consideration, one day Siddhartha put on the yellow robes and went forth from his home to a homeless condition against the wishes of his weeping parents. The Buddha's entering into homelessness was caused by the awareness that life is suffering that comes from material abundance. Ashrama Dharma as Hindu way of inner journey to self-realization. Ashrama Dharmas shows us that Sanatana Dharma becomes meaningful only when material affluence has been achieved. In societies with dire poverty, Sanatana Dharma is just meaningless. When the first two stages of Ashrama Dharma, that is Brahmacharya and Grihastha, are successful, that is when Artha and Kama are realized, the last two stages, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa, can be preceded and become meaningful. Therefore, mental richness is at least a requirement for the realization of Sanatana Dharma. The same is true in Buddha Dharma. Throughout the history of Buddhism, the rise of Buddha Dharma is accompanied by material well-being. Buddha Dharma and Sanatana Dharma were established on the basis of material prosperity. Only when wealth is eroded do they have significance. As a way of discovering the world within, the most important feature of Ashrama Dharma lies in making us realize that life is suffering in a gradual way. If a person certainly encounters that life is suffering, it becomes hard to bear. Without preparation, if a person certainly encounters the awareness that life is suffering, then he is unlikely to be able to bear it and is likely to become useless or dead. But if he progressively meets it through the preparation process, it can be the basis of an inner journey for spiritual progress. In addition, although Ashrama Dharma emphasizes that we must first achieve material abundance in the pursuit of spirituality, nevertheless, we voluntarily give up the material abundance and set forth on the inner journey for spiritual progress. The first and the second four ashrama of human life, that is brahmacharya and grihastha, are the stages of preparing for spontaneous giving up. The pursuit of the knowledge of Brahman and the practice of celibacy is the essence of brahmacharya. And the obligation of the head of a family is to produce children and to accumulate wealth. However, the first and the second stages are not for the sake of themselves, but are for next two stages of Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. As one transfers from Grihastha to Vanaprastha, spontaneous giving up or grand renunciation is necessary. Yet, that is not to say that the first and the second stages are less significant than the next two stages. If one does not devote oneself to the first and the second stages, one cannot see grand renunciation happen, or one will just see a languishing giving up. The process of transferring from Grihastha to Vanaprastha is compared to entering the priesthood in Buddhism, which is the behavior to sacrifice oneself to realize Dharma. If not that, then it is the running away from home, not then entering the priesthood. Here, the grand giving up is likened to the process where a plane takes off. The first and second stages are the process where a plane taxis out upon the runway, and the grand giving up is takeoff. The next two stages are compared to the flight into the sky. If the plane did not taxi out upon the runway, the takeoff would be impossible. Therefore, it is quite critical for one to devote oneself to brahmacharya and grihastha. However, if the plane keeps taxiing out upon the runway, what will happen? The flight into the sky will not happen, and the plane may even collide with an airport building, which might cause a serious accident. The first two stages are compared to the daily routine, while the next two stages represent departure from the routine. The daily routine is for the sake of comfort, while departure is for freedom. The daily routine is safe, but departure is dangerous. As long as one seeks for freedom rather than comfort, spontaneous giving up and the departure into danger, which upholds the spirit of ashrama dharma, should not be missed. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Very interesting paper. I forgot to announce earlier that the theme of and subject of this session is discovering the world within. That is the theme of this session. So now I would like to invite the second speaker, Venerable Dr. Thich Tam Dew. Yeah, great applause, please. I forgot every time, so please do that. It is called Taladhvani, is Brahmadhvani. It gives positive energy, this Karataladhvani. Thank you very much.
Respected Swami, respected all scholars and audiences, my topic is discovering the world within. In this paper, I want to say that through our six senses, namely eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, the one is formed in mind. And depending on the modes of thinking or the process of eight kinds of consciousness, it becomes illusionary or real. But meditation can help the thinking to become wiser and wiser. And we realize the real one and are happy in this daily life. The world nowadays is witnessing that a material world is going up, but human morality is going down in a bad way. A world full of uncertainty in many areas, and how to escape the uncertain context, or in other words, how to live peacefully among the world of instability. Mind, as the subject of the action, is a special form of energy of the universe. When present in human being, it gives us awareness, sense of the world. However, its activities are unfathomable, like a kaleidoscope of color. It is this consciousness in Pali language Gandhapa, which combines father's sperm with mother's ovum to create a new life, an embryo. Then from here into fetal development, it starts living a life. Then this creature will undergo a process: birth, growth, age, death. After that, the body disintegrates and the mind continues its journey with a new combination, and again, like the law of conservation of energy. Alaya Vijnana, or eighth consciousness, is seen as a warehouse which stores data or information. It is the source of knowledge from which all things and phenomena of the world are reflected and manifested by a called I as subject. The separable information from the five senses, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, body, is combined by the six consciousness and molded to produce an apparent cognition about the whole world. The eyes only see the picture, but cannot hear sound, similarly to the ear, nose, tongue, and body. And the sixth consciousness, knowing all the objects of the five previous senses. Thus, this knowing is not directly, but indirectly of the world. In Sanskrit, pravriti vijnana, and is subjective as created by the seven consciousness. In Sanskrit, Kalisto Pano Vijnana. These seven conscious considers Alaya Vijnana as a metaphysical person, confusing that the mind, the body, is a self as subject of recognition. In Sanskrit, Dasana Bhaga, and the material world or phenomenon is object recognized in Sanskrit, Nimitta Bhaga. And this discrimination of subject-object may have created the internal conflict, creating a chain of comparative psychological consequences, duality, for example, white, black, rich, poor, good, bad, etc. And from this arises craving, hatred, and despair, etc. The seventh consciousness confuses itself by ignorance and confusion, sees the artifacts of their own unreality as real things. Most people are living with and affected by this illusionary world. Consciousness in general is interactive, interdependent, or discrimination. In Sanskrit, Paratantra. For example, when connected with material shape, I creates a visual consciousness. Then this visual consciousness creates touch, touch creates feeling, Feeling creates perception, perception creates reasoning, reasoning creates obsession and perception. Alaya Vijnana is considered as a subconsciousness where all the types of consciousness arise and it works like a stream flowing restlessly in Sanskrit Paratantra. It is said that mind is compared to gibbon and mental consciousness to horse. Under the influence of ignorance, it will create negative sentiment, but with awareness, awakening of meditation, this flow stops immediately. Human activity, the base of meditation is concentration. When the mind is focused on an object, it creates an inner strength as a shining headlight, making all things visible awareness, while it inhibits and makes the rest cortex of resting, searing. Human mind is usually wandering, imagining, chasing evil desires, and cause unfortunate consequences in ethics, law, etc. There are various kinds of meditation, but there is one simple but effective, which is contemplating breath. He sits quietly, keeping backbone straight, closing eyes and noticing breath in and out. This breath is going in, he clearly knows it. The breath is going out, so does he clearly know. While so doing, if there are images, memories, thoughts, feelings, whether they are good or bad, happy or sad, he did not notice, bother or criticize. After a while, depending on right effort, the meditator will feel his mind and body better than before. No dreams, anxiety, affliction on the decrease, focusing on the work naturally. A method of training mind as such will eventually create a new condition psychological reflex which gradually replaces the old bad habits. Concentration is very helpful to human beings. The Buddha says, monks, there are these 4 ways of making concentration to become. What for? There is monks, the making concentration to become weak, well developed, and are much of conducive to happy living in this life, conducive to winning knowledge and insight, conducive to mindfulness and well-awareness, and conducing to the destruction of the asavas. The happy life without asavas is compared to the world's end, where there is no more being born or growing old, no more dying, no more falling from one existence and rising up in another, as described below, which cannot be reached by going but by calm due to concentration in this right body. Rohitasa of the Devas asked the Buddha, "Pray, Lord, is it possible for us by going to know, to see, to reach world's end, where there is no more being born or growing old, no more dying, no more falling from one existence and rising up in another? I declare that end of the world is not by going to be born, seen, or reached." And the Buddha said, "In this very phantom long body, along with its perceptions and thoughts, I proclaim the world to be. Likewise, the origin of the world and the making of the world to end. Likewise, the practice going to the ending of the world, knowing the world's end by becoming calmed. Accordingly, looking inside or discovering the world within is the good way of life for human beings to obtain well-being in this world full of uncertainty. Thank you for your attention.